Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Em, and today we are here to go over my very tentative R fantasy bingo board TBR for 2025. This is coming out a little bit later probably than it should have, but I very much like to take my time with putting together my TBR or even my recommendations for the R fantasy bingo board. I will of course list that post on the Reddit subreddit, the fantasy subreddit, the Reddit sub fantasy, what is it called? Anyways, I'll link it down below if you want to participate. This will be my third year participating, and yeah, it's always kind of fun. Pushes me to read a little bit out of my comfort zone. I try to be very purposeful in putting books that I actually wanted to read on this list and that I either already owned or have been rattling around in my head for a while as books that I did want to read at some point. So I guess without any further ado, we'll just dive on in. There is of course the regular mode and for our fantasy, and there is a hard mode. I do not do hard mode. Sometimes just completing the regular mode is challenge enough for me. I do not need the added pressure of hard mode. So that's what all my recommendations are going to be for. If you're doing hard mode, I love that for you. Good luck. But also if you don't already, you can go watch Angela at Literature Science Alliance. She always does recommendations for hard mode on her video. So first prompt is Knights or Paladins. This is pretty self-explanatory. One of the protagonists is a paladin or knight, and I am going to be reading Paladin's Faith by T. Kingfisher. This is the fourth book in the Saint of Steel series. This is the gorgeous UK cover that just got published. And I haven't read this yet because I was just waiting for this copy to get to me. Every main character, at least one of the main characters in each of these books, is a paladin, and they're great. I love T. Kingfisher. Not a hot take by any means, and I'm excited to make some progress in this series. Actually catch up with this series because this is the most recent book to publish. And then if you are wanting a recommendation and you don't want to read the Saint of Steel series, you could obviously go and read the Alana books by Tamora Pierce if you haven't gotten around to those, especially with the graphic novel of book one coming out in May. That would be a great one to add. Or I think a lot of people are putting Legendborn or one of the Legendborn books on their bingo board TBR. I do still need to read Bloodmarked, but I'm not going to tempt fate by putting it on this particular TBR. I hope it's not annoying that the lighting is going to be switching back and forth. I'm just on my laptop and I'm looking at the Our Fantasy page, and then I'm going to my Google Doc where I've written down what I'm reading. Hopefully that's not going to bug anybody too much. Square number 2 is Hidden Gem, a book with under 1,000 ratings on Goodreads. New releases and arcs from popular authors do not count. And the one I picked was published last year, so technically backlist, but it's also a finalist for the Nebulas this year, so its count will still hopefully will bump up a little bit, but at the time of me checking Goodreads, it only had 443 reviews on it, and that is Countess by Susan Palumbo, and I've actually already read this. Because I did a video where I read the novella finalists for the Nebula for this year. And this is a queer Trinidad Count of Monte Cristo retelling. And unfortunately, I didn't love it. I think doing a Count of Monte Cristo retelling, doing a revenge story in a novella, that's tough. Square number 3 is published in the 80s. Read a book that was first published anytime between 1980 and 1989. This is always my least favorite prompt. I hate the ones where they ask you to read old school books because I never have a good time. This is usually going to be, because you can put in one reread into the bingo board. This is usually where I utilize a reread. But who knows, maybe this will be the year I finally dive into Lois McMaster Bejeweled. I have checked out Shards of Honor from the library so many times and returned it completely unread. So who knows, maybe this will be the year that I finally try one of her books. To be fair, I have tried one of her books before from this series, but I think I started at the wrong spot. So I'd like to try again with Shards of Honor. And maybe this will be the year. Or maybe I'll find another book that was published in the 80s. Maybe I'll reread Alana. because Alana was published in 1984, and I always love to reread Alana. Square number 4 is high fashion. Read a book where clothing or fashion or fiber arts are important to the plot. This can be a crafty main character or a setting where fashion itself is explored. Really mad that I've already reread A Mask of Mirrors because that had a high fashion component. But I think for this one, I want to try Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim. I think this is Fashion Runway. No, that's not what it's called. Project Runway. Wow. Okay, so I've heard that Spin the Dawn is that show combined with something else, and I don't remember. So there's like a competition component. It's YA. I've read Elizabeth Lim before, and I really liked her writing, and I liked her storytelling, and I've meant to go back and read this, and I just have never quite gotten around to it. The last square on this first row is Down with the System. Read a book in which a main plot revolves around disrupting a system. And for this one, I am going to read Metal from Heaven by August Clark, who I absolutely adore. I'm so excited to read this. I've heard this is super gay, feral, which is what I expect from this author. I actually love the top quote on this book. It says, "A murderously good tale of highway robbery and sapphic revenge." I'm so ready for it. And this is August Clark's adult fantasy debut that came out last year. And don't ask me why it's been on my shelf unread for so long, because I utterly adore them, like I've said multiple times. Anyways, this is one I'm reading. All right, we're on to the second row. Prompt number 6 is Impossible Places. Read a book set in a location that would break a physicist. And so I think if you're looking for recommendations for this prompt, I think Dungeon Crawler Carl would fit. I also think Paranesi would fit. I'm going to be reading Driftwood by Marie Brennan. I forget how this fits the Impossible Places prompt. I found it in the recommendation channel thread for the bingo board, and I've read Marie Brennan before. She's half of the author duo for Mask of Mirrors, and then she also writes the Lady Isabella Trent series, which I absolutely love, and I believe Driftwood is a standalone from her. Prompt number 7 is a book in parts. Read a book that is separated into large sections within the main text. This can include things like acts, parts, days, years, and so on, but has to be more than just chapter breaks. And for this one, I'm going to be reading Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. I'm doing a challenge this year called My Year of Butler and Gaskell, where I'm alternating reading a book by Elizabeth Gaskell with a book by Octavia E. Butler. And this month, or this upcoming month, I'm filming this in April. You'll probably see this in May. So this month that you're seeing this is a Butler month, and I picked Parable of the Sower for my book for this month. So finally read it, and I'm not really looking forward to it, but it'll be nice to finally be in the know. Prompt number 8 is Gods and Pantheons. Read a book featuring divine beings. This one was so easy to pick. I'm going to be reading Faithbreaker by Hannah Kaner. This is book 3 and the final book in the Fallen Gods trilogy, and the gods are very active in this world. Our main character, Kessin, who we meet in book 1, she is literally a god killer, and she goes around and destroys shrines because it is illegal to worship gods in this kingdom. And once their shrine is destroyed, the gods weaken to the point where they can die. And yeah, this wraps up the whole series. I got my sister hooked on this trilogy, and she's already finished this, and now I'm scared a little bit to read it. So I've kind of been like putting it off and putting it off, but it'll be so good. And then prompt number 9 is Last in a Series. Read the final entry in a series. In a perfect world, I'm quoting Literary Mad Max, in a perfect world, I would be reading Elect of the Ninth by Tamsin Muir to complete this prompt. But since we still don't have a release date for that book, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to read instead. I'm going to hold out hope that Electa will come out before March 31st of 2026, but who knows? I'm sure I'll be able to slot something else in here instead. And then prompt number 10 is book club or read along book. Read a book that was or is officially a group read on our fantasy book club, but they have lots of options. All right, we're moving on to the third row. Prompt number 11 is parent protagonist. Read a book where the main character has a child to care for. The child does not have to be biologically related to the character. And I kind of hate having kids in books, following parents in books. It's very rarely fun for me because it's very rarely done accurately. But I believe the second Amina El-Sarafi book by S.A. Chakraborty or Shannon Chakraborty is supposed to come out in the fall. And the main character, Amina, is a mom. She does have a 10-year-old daughter, something like that. If that comes out on time, I will read that. Also, Shannon at one point long ago, posted in her Instagram stories that the second Amina El-Sarafi was going to be a haunted house book. Let's go. Let's freaking go. I'm so excited. Prompt number 12 is epistolary. This book must prominently feature any of the following: diary or journal entries, letters, messages, newspaper clippings, transcripts, etc., etc. I think I'm going to read Sorcery and Cecilia. This is by Patricia C. Reedy and another author. I can't remember their name. But Patricia C. Reedy has been my favorite author since I was 8. Dealing with Dragons is the book that I credit with turning me into a reader, because when I read it when I was 8 years old, it just like unlocked this love of reading. And I have never read Sorcery and Cecilia, and I've read every other book by Patricia C. Reedy. So it just feels like a weird gap to have in my reading relationship with her. So I think I'm going to read this. You could, of course, also count The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. That is told through journal entries and is very good revenge horror. Prompt number 13 is published in 2025. No reprints or new editions for this prompt. So that's to be a brand new book. And I'm going to read for this one, Everybody Wants to Rule the World Except Me by Django Wexler. This is book 2 in his Dark Lord Davi series. Book 1 is How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying. I read it last year, absolutely loved it, 5 stars. Book 2 comes out very shortly, and I'm excited for the campy fun time. Prompt 14 is an author of color. So read a book written by a person of color. I'm going to do Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. This is her most recent release, which I think leans a little bit more literary than science fiction, or fantasy, which will be unusual for Okorafor since I associate with her with largely being a sci-fi fantasy author. But I got this from Aardvark Book Club, and I'm trying to make sure I read my Aardvark Book Club books and they don't just sit on my shelf unread. So this will take care of that. And then the final prompt is small press or self-published. Read a book published by a small press, not one of the big 5 publishing houses or Bloomsbury, or it can be self-published. If it's a self-published book that is picked up by the publisher, you have to have read it before it got picked up. And I'm not so sure about this one. Right now, I've put Sleeping Worlds Have No Memory by Yaroslav Bersukov. And this is... I actually don't know what it is. I keep calling it 80s dark fantasy inspo because that's what the cover looks like for me. But this is also a Nebula shortlist. Can you tell what I'm working on behind the scenes right now? And I just started it, so I'm not fully committed to this because I might DNF it. But right now, this is what I'm putting in there. And like I said, it could change. But that kind of goes with everything on this list. Any of it could change at any time. You cannot hold me to anything I say in this video. All right, moving on to the 4th row. Prompt number 16 is biopunk. Read a book that focuses on biotechnology and or its consequences. I'm gonna put The Sun Forge by Sasha Stronach. Am I saying it differently? I'm trying to say it differently. It sounds like I'm just saying it the same each time. Anyways, this is book 2 in the Endsong trilogy. Book 1 is called The Dawn Hounds, and mushrooms are used in place of electricity in this world, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm going to assume the Sunforge is going to follow a similar setup, but I could be wrong. I might have to pivot and pick something else. I'm not really sure if this is a direct sequel or if it's like a companion novel because I haven't read it yet, but I really like The Dawn Hounds. It was super creative. Writing was good. Characters were great. Excited to do this one too. Also very queer. which is always nice. Prompt number 17 is elves and or dwarves. Read a book that features the classical fantasy archetypes of elves and or dwarves. They do not have to fit the classic tropes, but must be either named as elves and or dwarves or be easily identified as such. And for this one, I put in Witness for the Dead by Catherine Addison, which is a spin-off series from The Goblin Emperor. And I seem to remember these people being very elf-coded, was my assumption. We'll see if I'm right, but that's my plan so far. Prompt 18 is to pick a book with an LGBTQIA protagonist. Read a book where the main character fits under the umbrella. Pretty self-explanatory. I want to read Among Thieves by MJ Kuhn. This got on my radar shortly after I finished watching season 2 of Arcane, and I was desperately looking for books that had Vi and Caitlin vibes, and this one kept coming up, where the main character is a thief and she has a romance with a guard or like police type character, and it's supposed to be sapphic, and it sounds really, really good, and I've heard really good reviews for it, and I want to read it. Prompt number 19 is 5 SFF short stories. Any short story. I only have one unread short story collection left on my shelf because I have determined I am not a short story person. So I don't know what I'll do for this next year, but for this year, I'm going to read Fit for the Gods. This are short stories of Greek mythology reimagined. It's edited by Jen Northington and S. Zainab B. Williams, who used to co-host my favorite SFF podcast that has since stopped. Makes me sad. But this has stories by people like Alyssa Cole, Zoraida Cordova, Sarah Gailey, Valerie Valdez, like a lot of authors that I really love, and I am a Greek mythology girly to my core. So let's hope I read a short story collection that finally works for me. And then the last prompt on this row is Stranger in a Strange Land. Read a book that deals with being a foreigner in a new culture. The character must be either visiting or moving in as a minority. And I'm going to read The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nevo, which is a Great Gatsby retelling, told from Jordan's perspective. I've never read Great Gatsby, so I don't actually know who that is or if it matters. But I do need to read this. This is also a book club book for me, so gotta get it done. All right, and now we are on to the 5th row and the last row. Prompt number 21 is to recycle a bingo square. So you can use a square from any previous year. The bingo board's been going since 2015, but it can't repeat one that's on the current card. Honestly, I'll probably repeat the space opera prompt from last year because I feel like I am always trying to catch up in my space operas, and I love a space opera. It's so good. Prompt 22 is Cozy SFF. Read a cozy science fiction or fantasy. I might do the sequel to The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst for this one because I think that comes out later this year, and I really liked The Spell Shop, and I want to read more Sarah Beth Durst, but I've just kind of left this one open because I'm not quite sure when I'll be in the mood for it. Prompt number 23 is a generic title. Read a book that has one or more of the following words in the title: blood, bone, broken, court, dark, shadow, song, sword, or throne. I'm going to read Witches Steeped in Blood. Is that what it's called? Yes. I don't know what this is about. It's YA. I've had the audiobook on Libro FM for an eternity, it feels like. Maybe it's only been a year. It feels like it's been longer, but I want to read it. I love the cover, and I haven't read like a witchy YA book in a long time. Prompt number 24 is not a book. So you have to do something besides reading a book. A TV show, a game, video games, tabletop role-playing games, board games, like it all counts. I think, so currently my kids and I are watching all of the Studio Ghibli movies in release order, which has been cool because there's a lot that we haven't seen. So I think I'm going to count one of those for this prompt. We just watched Porco Rosso last weekend, which is about a man who's cursed to be a pig, and he's a World War I fighter pilot, and he's just inexplicably in Italy fighting seaplane pirates. It was great. Honestly, I was fully prepared for it to be weird, but we like all absolutely adored it. It's so underrated. So I think I just might count that because that was such a fun surprise. And then the final prompt number 25 is Pirates read a book where characters engage in piracy. So I have two potential books for this. One is Running Close to the Wind by Alexandra Rowland, which I think is Sapphic Pirates, if I remember correctly. And I've kind of had this one on my radar since it came out last year. Or the Lady Wisteria series by India Holton, because I've recently discovered that I love India Holton after reading The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love. And I think there's 5 flying houses in the Lady Wisteria books, and so all the characters are house pirates, I guess. I don't know. I think it'll be fun. So I'll have to pick between one of those. All right. That's it. That is my potential TBR for our fantasy bingo board for 2025. And I'm excited. It was fun to come up with all these books, kind of see what fit. I relied on the recommendations board a lot, but then I also found Angela's Reddit bingo board video and Literary Mad Max's very, very helpful. So I'll link both of those videos down below if you want to go check out their recommendations, especially for the prompts where I couldn't figure out which of my books on my shelves fit the prompt, and I didn't like any of the options on the Our Fantasy bingo recommendations, because sometimes those recommendations can skew very white and very man, and I wanted to make sure I had some more diversity in my bingo board. So cool. Thank you so much for watching and spending your precious time with me. If you want to leave an emoji to let me know that you made it to the end of this video. Is there a bingo emoji? That would probably be too easy. Let's leave a bullseye emoji, because why not? Because life is too short to not use fun emojis. And like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll talk to y'all in the next one. Bye!